So much for putting up with me and this is my 250th show. I come a long way since I walked through the doorways here at WNTN almost 6 years ago and just started the ball rolling. And I didn't know it was going to get this big, but I didn't know, so I'm having fun. And I appreciate everybody listening. Again, tell your family, tell all your friends, tell your enemies. We're going to talk to Bill Duke right now. All right, my guest this afternoon, Bill Duke, has blazed an amazing career in showbiz that has lasted almost 5 decades. During that time, he has appeared in films like Predator, Car Wash, Commando, X-Men, The Last Stand, American Gigalo, Bird on a Wire, Menace to Society, PaybacK and Red Dragon, to name a few. He's also become one of Hollywood's premier directors, directing shows like Falcon Crest, Cagney and Lacey, Hill Street Blues, Miami Vice, The Twilight Zone, and American Playhouse as well as directing films like Deep Cover, A Rage in Harlem, The Cemetery Club, Sister Act 2. He joins me this afternoon to talk about his amazing journey in Hollywood in his new book, Bill Duke, My 40-Year Career on Screen and Behind the Camera, which is burning up Amazon as we speak. The pride of Poughkeepsie, New York, actor, director, producer, Mr. Bill Duke. Bill, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon.
Pleasure being with you, and thank you so much for having me.
Bill, we were in Boston, like I said, and you have a history in Boston. I want to start off early in your career. How did you make the trek to Boston University?
Well, I was in New York. I was in Poughkeepsie and Dutchess Community College, and I was fortunate enough to get a Martin Luther King scholarship, and I chose Boston University because, it was one of the premier places to be educated at that time. So I was very, very, very blessed to be able to go.
And I mean, your background. I mean, your dad and mom, were they actors? Were they in the industry?
When I said I wanted to be an actor, they thought I was insane. But the only person then was Sidney Poitier.
Wow.
And there were no black men acting really that we really knew of, maybe, but Paul Robeson, but, it was not practical at that time. So they wanted me to be a doctor or a writer or whatever, because they made, English teachers made money and doctors made money. And I'd fallen asleep in my Chaucer class for the 3rd time at BU.
Can't blame you. Can't blame you for that, Bill.
I'm telling you, and I snored also. And so it was like, I got kicked out, and it was like, how can I say, I had been in a play in BU, and I got the bug, but I didn't have the courage to move ahead. And so as a result, when I get kicked out of the English class, my friend Israel Hicks said, "Bill, you've been talking about your passion of acting, etc." This guy named Lloyd Richards. Lloyd Richards was one of the first black directors on Broadway, did Raising in the Sun. So go up to an audition. I said, I'll never get in. An audition, Lloyd brought me in, and he became my mentor.
Mm. You also... Go ahead, sorry.
So that was how I got into the business. So and I followed him from there to NYU. He became the head of department at NYU, and then he brought me out to Los Angeles to be his assistant, and then he told me to stay because he had faith in me, and that's how he's responsible for my career to a great extent.
So you had some help along the way in terms of people that really, watched over you. Did you did you leave BU because you couldn't afford it?
I was going to, but I went. I was going to come back to Poughkeepsie, and because my scholarship paid for my tuition, but not my room and board, and I was like working like a slave trying to, get money and stuff. And then went back to the Dutchess, and the president of Dutchess had heard about my leaving BU. He was a strict man named Dr. Hall. And so he asked me to come in his office. I said, Dr. Hall, I don't have time. He says, come in my office. And he says, I'm ready. I hear about you're going to leave BU. I said, yeah, I'm going to come back and make some. And he stops him in the middle of the sentence. He stands up and reaches in his breast pocket and pulls out an envelope. And I said, "What is this?" He said, "Open it." The envelope had in it money from my room and board for the next 2 years that I was at BU.
Oh, wow. Wow. Wow, it's a divine intervention, I guess.
Amazing. I mean, he was one of the kindest hearts. I mean, it was just amazing.
So you finished up at BU?
Then went to NYU School of the Arts because of Lloyd Richards.
Okay.
And NYU was one of the incredible educations because it was so thorough in terms of acting, voice, speech and voice, and all of the rest of the skills, movements, and really had a great time there.
So, Bill, you're a very big guy. You're about 6'4", 6'5". So you're at Tisch, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So you're at NYU at Tisch. You're taking lessons, I guess. And how do you end up doing ballet? How do you end up in a tutu? Did you end up in a tutu?
Oh, God. I'm sorry you read that part. Anyway, Gina Erdman, who was a great lady and teacher, she was the head of the dance department, and dance was a requirement because movement and movement skills is something they required you to deal with and do. And so I had no options. I had to become, I had to take a ballet class. I'm glad there was no social media, no cameras, because it was not a pretty picture.
Yeah, not a pretty picture.
I appreciate it.
So correct me if I'm wrong. 1971, you do your first play on Broadway.
Yeah, Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death.
How was that? I mean, very early on in your career.
It was incredible. Melvin Van Peebles, who
yes,
one of the first black producers on Broadway, had 2 plays on Broadway at that time, and he was a Wall Street genius. And so I think he paid for most of the stuff himself. And so, the great Gilbert Moses, one of the greatest directors ever, he directed it. And so it was, being on was a learning experience because a lot of the actors that were in the play were like, and I used to stand in the wings, just learn. When I was on stage, I stand in the wings and just look at the other actors that were in the play, the older ones. And no one really knows who any of them are, really. But they were some of the greatest actors I've ever met.
So you're in New York, Bill, and as an actor, it's very difficult to make an honest living. I mean, you were in New York, and you fell on some hard times paying your rent. You were behind in the rent, and again, a more divine intervention that really changed your life. You were actually on the street at one point.
Yes, I was on the street begging for money for my rent and food, and one day I was just desperate, and this older black lady passed me, was coming down. I said, "Hey, ma'am, can I have some change?" She just walked past me, and I said, "Well, okay, fine." Asking the next person, I feel a tap on my back, and I turn around, and it was the same older black lady, and I said, "Oh, ma'am, you got some change?" And she looked at me for, it seemed like a minute, but it was like a couple of seconds. And she looked in my eyes and she said, "Baby, do your mama know you out here doing this?" And that, how can I say? That changed everything.
It changed everything for you.
If my mother and father, who worked sometimes 7 days a week, knew that I was begging for food and money with their name, they would have gone berserk. But it was something that, how can I say, that lady was sent by some
right. She was an angel.
God sent,
So when do you make the trek out to Hollywood, Bill?
Lloyd Richards was my mentor, and he got a job directing a film for PBS called Go Watch, which is about the internment of the Japanese during World War II. And so he made me his assistant. Came out here, became his assistant, made his appointments, whatever he needed. Then I was going to go back to New York, And he said, "No, Bill, stay." I said, "Why, Mr. Richards?" He said, "I believe in you. I think just if it wasn't for Lloyd Richards, I would have gone back to New York and not stayed."
Wow. So your first big screen role was a 1976 comedy drama Car Wash star alongside Richard Pryor and George Carlin. I mean, talk about how you got that role. How did you get that role of Dwayne?
Well, I knew the director was a good friend of mine, Michael Schultz. Michael also just gave me great things. He put me in charge of he was doing a film, his first film here in Hollywood, and he had a play called Dream of Monkey Mountain, supposed to go to Germany, to Munich, and he told me, "Hey, you finish directing it and go to Germany." I said, "Whoa, okay." But I mean, I just had a lot of good people. What was the question? I'm sorry. What was the question?
How was it? How did you get the role?
Oh, in Car Wash, yeah. So yeah. Michael was my, and then so I went in to see him and Ivan Dixon, who was
Dixon, yeah, Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, one of the greatest ever, and they sat me down and talked to me about the role, and those days I was an angry black man in a lot of ways, young black angry man. Right. I knew the heart of Dwayne, so, and next thing I know, they called me a week later and said I had the role.
Oh, wow. What did that do for your career? I mean, obviously visibility.
Oh, it launched everything. I mean, no one knew who I was before that. It was like, it was, and Michael should have gotten much more than he got from that, because Car Wash set some some great stuff for a lot of people in a lot of ways,
Yeah, it was a great movie. It's a cult classic, and it's also one of my favorite songs as well. Bill, you go out to Hollywood or Los Angeles to become an actor. I mean, what were some of the challenges you faced being an African American as an actor, to become an actor back then?
Well, it was a time of segregation. It was just after segregation. It was like, it was a time for what they called for black people, the pretty boys. They were light skinned. They called good hair. I was dark, big, and threatening. And for people to think of me outside of that image was difficult in those days. I mean, I was never offered a romantic role, to being with a woman or any of those things. It was always, I was a killer or something like that. And I turned down certain things, but, I had to make a living too. So I had to be selective in terms of what I did. But, it was not easy. And I was an actor or director. I directed a film later called Cemetery Club, as you know.
Right.
And I went around the country on the PR tour, and I would be asked, all the time, this is a film about 3 Jewish women who are mourning. Why are you directing it? And I told them that, 2 things. One, I've had people that died that I care about. And 2, Steven Spielberg just directed Color Purple, and they look at me straight, and they didn't mean this in any negative way. They just said, "That's different."
Yeah.
What can I tell you?
Right. Yeah, you've had an amazing career. Like I said, we talked on the phone, and I really admire your work. You're very intense on the screen. In 1985, you starred in Commando alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, that was a big hit for you because that was a huge movie back in the 80s. The big blockbusters.
Yes. Very fortunate. My agents helped get me that. And when I met Arnold, I mean, one of the most gracious guys I've ever known. Good people, good heart, and he accepted me with open arms in terms of being part of it.
Those are big arms.
I know, man. Big arms. That the Predator that you saw was not the original Predator?
The original Predator? No, I don't know that.
Oh, you didn't know about that story?
No.
Okay, the original Predator was a much smaller creature, more ambidextrous, with all these lasers coming out of different parts of his body that he could kill you in an instant with. In order they were going to put the actor playing the part had to wear a felt suit and flying through trees with wires and stuff, right? And it was like over 100 degrees in Puerto Vallarta at that time. And he passed out twice because from dehydration.
Wow.
And the producer comes over and says, listen, man, you're wasting my money and my time. You pass out again, I'm firing you. And the guy says, wait a minute, man. I'm not passing out on purpose. I'm dehydrated.
Wow.
Because I understand that, but you're costing me time and money. So 2 weeks go by or so, and the guy passes out again. The producer comes over and says, hey, man, you're fired. That actor was Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Really?
Yes.
Very good.
His first job in the United States.
Oh, yeah, because him and Arnold were buddies, were they not?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Very good, Bill. Very good. I like that kind of stuff. Because I thought, wasn't there like a 7-footer? Was he like the second guy, anyways?
Yes, he was like 7. He was gigantic. He was a dancer. He was 7 foot. Good people too. Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. So Jean-Claude Van Damme was the first Predator, but got fired because he kept passing out too much.
That's right.
I did not know that. Thank you. Talk about the conditions. I mean, you said you was filming in a Mexican jungle. I mean, how bad was that?
It was bad. It was like the heat was incredibly overwhelming. The humidity. We had to drive up like 45 minutes or so into the mountains, into the middle of the jungle, all that stuff. And it was crazy, man. And when the first week or 8 days that the caterer put a netting around the tent, but whenever we got our food, there were bugs in it.
Oh.
In the first few days, said, take this junk back. We're not eating it. And but there was no more food, and he couldn't do any better. So by the second week, it was called protein.
Oh, wow. Did you see any scorpions? Oh, man. How about any scorpions? See any scorpions?
Oh, man. Sonny Landon got bitten by a scorpion.
Who did?
Sonny Landon.
Oh, wow.
He got bitten by a scorpion.
Jesus. Wow.
Take him to the hospital.
Do you get a bump for that? They give you a bump with that for the SAG? They give you a bump for that?
I don't know about that. Crawled in the ground. There were coral snakes that went across. It's like crazy.
And how long was the shoot for, Bill?
Oh, to be honest with you, I don't remember the exact number of weeks, but it felt like forever because of the conditions. But we formed a bond as brothers there. We didn't complain. We glad to be working,
right?
And which is the bond that we formed with each other.
Bill, I mentioned in the intro that you're an incredibly talented director. You did Sister Act 2, Deep Cover. You've also done TV shows like Falcon Crest, Dallas, Hill Street Blues, Knots Landing, to name a few. First off, why did you decide to get behind the camera? What made you decide that?
I just wanted to be able to do more than act. I always wanted to be behind the camera. I was in a TV series called Palmerstown, USA, and for a couple of seasons, and then it went off the air, and I didn't work for at least a year and a half, almost 2. And I said, something, Bill? You directed plays, in L.A., in New York. You've always been intimidated by the equipment of film. You just got to get over it. And so, when you're not working as an actor, maybe you can get directing jobs. So I got into AFI.
American Film Institute.
That was a blessing. At the time, Tony Villani was the head of it. And I got in there. It was a great, great, great experience. And I came out with a film called The Hero. And it was a short little film, my graduating film. And it got some awards. And so I said, wow, I went around to every studio. And they said, no. We'll do your second. We'll give you your second job, not your first. Got depressed, went away to a meditation retreat, and I was there for like a week, and I got a call from my agent, said, hey, David Jacobs over at Knots Landing wants to see you. I said, what? I got back from the meditation retreat,
And that was I don't mean to interrupt, but that was a huge show at its time.
That was one of the biggest shows on the air.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And so what I did was I got back, and then the following week I was in David Jacobs' office, and we talked for like 5 minutes. And then I went to my agent. I said, they're not serious, man. And so a few days later, the agent comes and says, "Hey, David Jacobs wants you to direct Knots Landing."
Wow.
I went crazy, man. I told everybody in the world that I knew.
Wow.
So I went in to pre-production, and the last day of pre-production, Joel, the line producer, came in and said, "Hey, Bill, great pre-production, man. We knew you were going to be a great director. I think David's going to be a great director based on your reel." I said, "What reel?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I just got an AFI." So he says, "Wait a minute, Bill." He goes into David Jacobs' office. David Jacobs had mixed my box up with somebody else's.
Oh, my goodness.
That's my first job.
So he sent the wrong reel to the producers.
That's how I got my first job.
Wow. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And this is what my show is all about, this behind-the-scenes stuff that nobody gets to hear about. That's beautiful. And the rest is history, pretty much.
Yeah.
Because you did like 10 episodes, I think.
Yes, several, yeah.
And again, this is like, a huge show. Not Mickey Mouse.
Yes.
Bill, as a director, as you progressed as a director, I mean, you're behind the camera. What do you do when a scene is just not working with a couple actors, if something's not jiving right?
Actors, acting is a craft, not just, I wish it wasn't called acting, because you're not acting, you're being. And in order to do that, you have to surrender to something beyond the lines. And I call it falling into darkness backward. And so it makes you very vulnerable as an actor. And as a director, you have to build trust with the actors. They have to know that if you say something that it's not working or whatever, and you try to help them through it. And so I've always been able to be patient with actors. I have rehearsals before we shoot. Whatever problems they have with the script, we work them out. Once we get to the set, we've had an agreement. So it's that kind of thing, But I love actors, the great actors like Meryl Streep and other people that are just fearless. I just admire them and love, right. And just they love what they do.
Has there ever been a time when you're directing, Bill, that the studio doesn't give you the budget you really were anticipating?
Oh yeah, sure.
Every time.
I mean, the thing is that they want you to make their money back. And I understand that. So they're going to try their best to make you penny pinch as much as possible, but they want the results they want. So you're caught between a rock and a hard place to a certain extent, but you make it through.
Right. So you just have to adapt and just try to cut corners as much as you can, just to keep the integrity of the film or the
But if that fails, it's not their fault. It's going to be your fault.
Right.
So.
Right. Bill, as an actor, was there ever a like a role that you when you were starving that you regretted taking? Does that make any sense?
Well, regret to a certain extent. I had no money and I was really desperate. And there was a Kojak that I did.
Oh yeah.
Where I paid this pimp that wore a fur coat and lift shoes and a pink hat, whatever it was. And I had to talk in a pimp voice. It was like, people love that performance for some reason. I have no idea. But I tried to buy it back from CBS one time and they wouldn't let me. So.
Oh, wow. Oh. Surprised. Bill, I want to ask you a really weird question here, so please forgive me. So, Marlon Brando, Sidney Poitier, and Laurence Olivier are sitting at 3 separate tables, and you can only sit at one table to talk about the craft. Which table are you sitting at?
What are they again now, the choices?
Marlon Brando, Sidney Poitier, and Laurence Olivier.
Wow.
can only sit at one table.
Oh man.
It's a tough call for anybody.
Well, I would say Marlon, but I invite Sydney over.
Invite him over for a drink. Yeah, it's a tough question. I want to hit you with that one, but they're all brilliant. I mean, you can't go wrong where you sit.
You can't go, man. When I saw Sidney Poitier in Raising of the Sun, it made my whole career, man.
Yeah, great film.
When he was in another film too, he was in where I forgot the name of the film, but the white guy slapped him in the face and he slapped him.
Oh, in the heat of the night.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was a big deal back then. That was huge.
You're kidding me, man? That was like, what?
Yeah. That was
like, I mean, talking about respect. I'm talking about someone who set an image for you that gave you self-regard and dignity. That was incredible.
Yeah, it was an incredible film. It still holds up to today. A lot of his films, the Defiant ones, great films.
Yes.
Bill, I want to talk about Hollywood's my opinion, very hypocrites sometimes. Let's talk about the diversity in Hollywood if we can. I mean, because you see the Oscars all the time. Every year there's an issue. There's always, this year there was 0 female directors nominated and 1 African-American woman nominated, and her name escapes me. She did the Harriet Tubman role. What are your thoughts on that?
I get speechless because I mean, I thought Jamie Foxx was brilliant in Just Mercy. I thought that his name is out of my mind now, but for Dolomite, Eddie Murphy was
Dolomite,
brilliant.
Yes, very good.
Cynthia Orduba, I thought was brilliant in Harriet. I could go on and on,
right.
But if the people who are judges don't connect to those actors or to our culture in that way, it's never going to change, and I would hope and pray that one day it does, and I hope that it does, but it's very disappointing sometimes. I was at people's house, Oscars on, they had it on, then they turned, they were so disappointed, they turned it, they just didn't watch it anymore.
I mean, do you think that the Black Panther a couple of years ago or last year, really moved the bar a little bit?
Well, not really, because if you go pitch a project, anytime today, and they'll say, well, Black Panther was an anomaly.
Right.
So I think more action films like that will possibly get made, but they'll make Black Panther, I don't know. It's hard to see and say, man, because it's a different time in our nation. And, I guess they think that black films don't translate globally. I think Netflix may change that because Netflix just made a deal with Nigeria, which is Nollywood. And so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I agree with you because it's an issue every year, and it seems to be, I don't know why, but I mean, listen, I don't care what color anybody is. If they're good for the part, give it to them. I mean, give it to them, man. Let them prove themselves.
I agree.
Bill, let's get into a little bit about Hollywood itself. Young kids, they come to Hollywood in droves by planes, by buses, by cars. They pack up their whole life and they come out to Hollywood to become famous because, that's what they want to do for some reason. And, fame is a very difficult animal to tame. What advice can you give for these kids? Because Hollywood's a very dark town, in my opinion. You hear all the stories, kids get strung out. Having self-confidence is great when you get out there. But
a lot of them end up homeless also.
Right.
Down on spring and stuff. And a lot of them end up on drugs, and because it's really a business of rejection. And so when you are rejected numerous times, you start not only doubting your craft, but yourself and your value. And I have a foundation called the Duke Media Foundation, and we teach young people interested in business two things: media literacy, which is how's the industry changing, in terms of, and then financial literacy. Once you make, how you not just spend it, but how do you use it? And
Right.
so the thing is, you know, they have to understand it's a business. It's a business. And the second thing to understand is they don't have to wait to be discovered anymore. They can discover themselves and shoot their own films or shoot.
Right.
You know, I mean, I just finished, last 2 years ago, I did a film with Steven Soderbergh called High Flying Bird. And he flew us into New York City and shot the film in a couple of weeks, not months, but weeks, with 5 iPhone 7 Pluses.
Wow.
When they did the dolly shots, they rolled them around in a wheelchair.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays the technology is there. I mean, if you don't even have to go to LA, you can just do it in your basement and get a couple of buddies, and you're on your way. I know a lot of kids, young kids today, and they're doing that. That's what they're doing. They're making webisodes, TV series. You see these kids on YouTube. They're getting 2 million hits, and and William Morrison's calling them the next day.
That's right, because if you get enough eyeballs, they'll call you.
Right. I mean, silly question, Bill, but do you think somebody with a bigger name gets the part because he might have 2 million Twitter followers as opposed to the other kid with 3,000? But he's a great actor too.
Of course. I mean, here's years and years and years ago, I was pitching projects to studios, etc., networks. And they would sit down with me, we'd meet, I'd say, hey, great idea, and okay. And I'd leave the meeting, and they'd never get back to me. So I went to my agent one day and said, man, this is depressing, man. What's the problem? Well, I don't know what's going on. They never get back to me. And he said, Bill, did you answer the essential question that they want the answer to in the first 3 to 5 minutes of your meeting? I said, what do you mean? He said, Bill, here's what they want to know in these first 3 to 5 minutes of the meeting. How in the hell you going to make me my money back? So we go with passion. It's about my grandfather. It's about slavery. It's about blah, 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 blah. Hey, great. That's great. But you didn't finish the sentence.
Right. Bill, do you think some kids today will come out to LA? Do you think they're entitled? They have the entitlement feeling?
Some will do anything for attention because that's their lack of self-esteem and self-respect. I mean, like young ladies that do things online that are unbelievable, from not only nudity but sexual, whatever it takes, and young guys doing things that are crazy. If they get a certain number of eyeballs, they think that they'll be famous. And I don't think they have an interest in the craft of acting. It's more about being famous and recognized and
having more Instagram followers, maybe.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's more of a, it used to be something about the craft of acting that you loved it, but now it's more instant gratification, and somebody's got to watch me and make some money, and most of that is a temporary reality.
Bill, you wrote an amazing book called Bill Duke, My 40-Year Career on Screen and Behind the Camera. I know you have extensive background, obviously a vast resume. What made you decide to write the book?
I wanted people to people make assumptions about, when you have success that, oh, well, you just made it and you're lucky, and they don't see the hard work. It's not that you were entitled. You just worked your ass off for many years to just not only survive, but to hone your craft, etc. And I wanted to give some nuggets of information to the young people reading my book that didn't make the same mistakes I made, and they took advantage of some of the things that I learned. That's the real reason I wrote the book. I wanted to be able to, if I leave a legacy, I want to leave a legacy that gives back, not just about me,
I'd be remiss, Bill, if I didn't mention that the Directors Guild bestowed their Lifetime Achievement Award to you, putting you in the likes of Clint Eastwood, Alfred Hitchcock, and Steven Spielberg. I mean, that's pretty big stuff, dude.
Thank you so much, and I'm very appreciative of it. I really
am. Bill, like you just mentioned about giving back. Talk about the Duke Media Foundation, and where can people go if they want to learn more about it?
You can go to DukeMediaFoundation.org, DukeMediaFoundation.org, and see what we're doing with young people, and donate if they want, or call and ask. All the information is there. But basically, we're teaching young people, as I said, media literacy, which is how things change in the industry in terms of, opportunities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What should you be doing and not doing?
Right.
A lot of kids are coming here and $1,500 on pictures.
Right.
And we're saying, well, wait a minute, man. If I'm a director, I'd rather see your reel than your picture. And you can make a reel and edit it by just filming the scenes with the people in your acting class and editing it. So the second thing we teach is, I also teach about Netflix, Hulu, Crackle, now AT&T. It's all changing things. And then we teach them financial literacy. As you know, there are a lot of people in this business making millions of dollars, and in 2 years, 3 years, they're broke.
Yeah.
They just buy things. They spend money, but no one teaches them how to use money. So we, Karen A. Clark, who's a friend of mine that works at a major bank here, she comes in and teaches, what is the FDIC? What is Federal Reserve? What is banking? What is debt? What is saving? What is spending? What is... Right.
So it's like boot camp for actors.
Yes, yes.
I mean, because like we talked about earlier about people coming here, it's a very difficult business, and I may be wrong, but like 5 or 10% of people actually work in the industry full time, and everybody else is not making a living.
You're right, and I think 10% or less make over $5,000 or $10,000 a year.
Yeah, right. It's a tough beat. It's not easy.
And you have to love it, but you have to have the ability to survive. And if you don't understand that, you end up in a place that's not pretty.
Right. Deal with rejection well. I had a very good friend of mine. He was, back in the day, he was young, handsome. I mean, we used to go to nightclubs, and when he came walking through the door, we left because we could do here tonight. He just came in. You know what I mean? But he went out there later, tried to become an actor, and he stayed there for a while. And I says, "How you making out?" He says, "Mike, every time I go to an audition, they all look like me."
Wow.
So it's a tough beat. And Bill, real quick, I mean, where can we see you next, and what are you working on?
I'm on a TV series called Black Lightning, and it's on CW. It's going to its 4th season. I've been on for 3 seasons, so I hope to be in the 4th season also. And it's a great show. It's an action piece. It's based on a comic book, and so I hope people watch it. Black Lightning. Also, I've written 2 more books: a poetry book and also a children's book, which I'm trying to get published. And then